All right, welcome back to the stock market recap for Monday, June 9th. We had a pretty quiet day in the market today, but before we jump into that, just wanted to lay out the agenda for any new viewers. What we do in these videos is we go over the indexes, take a look at some key stock action, review industry ETFs, the market leaders, and then end the video with some long and short setups. So if you guys enjoy the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing these daily recaps Monday through Thursday, a full weekend review and preparation for the next week on Saturday, and then a trading tip video on Sunday. All right, now let's jump into it. So we have QQQ, NASDAQ, very tight trading day today. Um, just over that 5-day EMA, not doing anything wrong. Nice gap up on Friday in tight action again on Monday with even lighter volume than Friday. So as long as we continue to hold the 10-day and even the 20-day on any pullback, the market seems strong. SPY up 0.1%, similar tight action. No gap down zones from the rally high. So that's, again, something that I tend to look at for weakness. We don't have any of that. The moving averages are in the right order here. Let me put the 200-day back on. Should have had that. There we go. The 200-day is above the 50-day, so it'll take some time for the 50-day to catch up there. But overall, all the moving averages are in an uptrend, and the shorter term moving averages, the 5, the 10, the 20, and the 50 are in the right order. IWO, this is the growth ETF. So the Russell 2000, just the growth stocks within that. Another gap up over the 200-day moving average. A weaker closing range today, but still closed positive, up 0.4%. And overall, has been weaker compared to the NASDAQ and S&P 500, but lately we're starting to see a lot of strength and a lot of small cap names getting going. Great strength again out of ARKK. Friday, we had the highest volume in over a year with a strong close up 8.3%. Today, another strong move up 2.2% and a strong hammer candle right there with a mini gap up. Bitcoin, after Thursday's wedge drop where we lost a 20-day EMA, we were a little bit more concerned there. But on Friday, we followed it with a gap up on this chart. I know Bitcoin trades 24/7, but a gap up in this chart. And then on Monday, really strong action through all the moving averages right near highs. So this really looks like just another shakeout as we get back to all-time highs. Next, we'll take a look at some key stock action. So last week on Friday, we were waiting for a few stocks to be included in the S&P 500. That was Hood and APP. Unfortunately, neither of those stocks were included. They didn't make any adjustments to the S&P 500. Hood actually acted super strong today. We had a gap down, a morning sell-off into the 10-day EMA and this support gap. Found support at that area. That was my buy point. I put on a 10% position right there. We had a nice rally back through the 5-day EMA. We did have an unfilled gap down, but overall, really strong action after that bad news getting priced in there. APP, a little bit weaker. We did have an unfilled gap down, and we closed at the low of the day on on an uptick in volume. Closed under the 10-day EMA. Maybe we'll come into the 20-day or this gap zone and then build out a higher low, but a little bit weaker than Robinhood with the same type of news. I think Robinhood is one of the liquid leaders in the market, so it wasn't too surprising that we had this reaction. But even with that, really strong move and happy to own it. Next kind of section I have here is the Elon versus Trump kind of fallout. Actually, really good move out of Tesla today. We came in and confirmed this support gap. So we traded under the gap zone low, but by the end of the day, people were supporting the price. We got through the 50-day moving average, Friday's high, and the 200-day moving average. There's still probably going to be a lot of volatility with this name, but overall, really like the action Friday and today there. A couple of Elon's competitors that I thought would have a nice move. ASTS. This is coming out of the right side of the base with massive volume here. We had a recent undercut of all the key moving averages, and I actually took this off my watch list. Of course, the day of the shakeout bottom. and then really take a look at all this volume that's come in since. We've had a really nice weekly base here after a run from $2 up to $40 or $36, 10-month base, and now we're breaking out on the right side of this base on massive volume. Definitely something to keep an eye out. We did close a little bit weaker because there was a comment made by Trump that he still likes Starlink, and it doesn't seem like he wants to escalate the situation with Elon. So maybe Thursday was just kind of the sell off in Tesla, and we'll see some of those stocks come back. But for now, we'll take a look at some of the competitors as well. Rocket Labs rallied up through this resistance gap, couldn't close above it. So by the end of the day, institutions are still selling at this area. A close over this and then some kind of tightness would be a really nice spot to watch. Uber today gapped up, opened on the low, rallied up into this resistance gap, and then closed slightly weak. Still up 1.8% today. Really good action. Next, I wanted to get to the nuclear theme. So CCJ, this was a stock that for some reason I had off my watch list until today, so I don't have this marked up. But today, highest volume in over a year, strong closing range, up 10.8%. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle. OKLO got back through the HVC on Friday, gapped up, kind of pulled back into the HVC, the closing price of the highest volume day on the 23rd there, touched the HVC and then ran higher, ending the day up 8.3% over all key moving averages. And SMR pulled back to the 5-day intraday, bounced right off that moving average, and then closed well. So I think this is a theme to really be focused on. I think SMR is the leader in that group. Slightly weaker than OKLO today, but overall structure wise, all three of these are looking great. Semis is another group that really is showing its strength lately. Wanted to cover NVIDIA because we finally got over this gap down zone from the DeepSeek gap down, closed just a few cents over the gap down high. So now that we have that cleared, no overhead resistance, at least with the gap down areas. AVGO, a little bit of weakness compared to the market, down 1.1%. We did undercut the support gap, closed above it. That's an area of interest to me. AMSC, this has been just rocketing off the lows, really strong action from 14 up to 33, so over 100% move there in a short amount of time. Any kind of pullback here, allowing the 20-day EMA to catch up, would be a nice spot to manage risk against. And then last stock, NVTS. This was a really nice move today. I bought this on the opening range break. We had just massive volume followed by a low volume pullback that closed above the 5-day, massive volume push out, couple low volume pullback to the 5-day, and then a similar pattern on Thursday and Friday. We see lower volume pulling into the 5-day moving average but closing above. When we're in a risk on market like this and we see more and more money floating to the riskier and riskier stocks, when you get a gap up in a structure like this, it for me was worth it to take that risk. Now I got my stop at the low of the day, and that was up 18.5% today. Few ETFs that I wanted to cover. BLOK, BLOK, with Bitcoin strength. No surprise that this is right near highs again. We're eating into this resistance gap. Not quite closed it all the way, but really good action here, putting in the higher low, pushed through the 5 and the 10-day EMA last week, and a nice closing price there. Let me sort this high to low. NLR, this is the nuclear and uranium theme. So that's CCJ, CCJ, SMR, OKLO theme. New highs today. Came into the 10-day EMA, has bounced there. Again, a theme that I want to be focused on. SMH, the semiconductor ETF. Another attempt at that DeepSeek gap down. Not quite able to close it. Once we do, I think that's going to be a huge sign of strength in the market. The other one that I wanted to cover was, where is it? Cyber, a little bit weaker today, lower highs, lower lows, closed under the 5-day EMA on a pickup in volume. We saw a couple stocks, where is it? RBRK followed through to the downside after some earnings volatility, down 4.9%, 5%, losing the 10-day EMA. And then some other weakness out of, where is it? CrowdStrike down 0.8%, 0.9%. Nothing bad overall. I still think cybersecurity is a group to focus on, but did have some weakness today to point out. Next, we'll go over the leaders list. So these are 9 stocks that are very liquid that have been leading the market. Not to say that they will continue to lead, but something that we'll use to kind of measure the risk on versus risk off aspect of the market. CRWV, this has been the IPO leader of this cycle. And once again, we had a pullback to the 5-day moving average, followed by a gap up and a second gap up, just like what we got on the 29th, where we faked higher, closed lower, had strong day 2 action, then 2 more gaps, and we exploded into new highs. Quick pullback to the 5-day, 2 more gap ups, closed right into this resistance gap, but really strong closing price, up another 15.6%. Great chart to study overall for CRWV. PLTR, good strength today, higher highs, higher lows. Low of day bounced at the 20-day EMA. We closed above all key moving averages. This is after some weakness on Thursday and Friday, or sorry, on Wednesday and Thursday last week. So great to see overall this holding up. Carvana, a little bit of weakness, undercutting the 10-day EMA and the support gap, but we closed above the 5-day, closed relatively well, only down 0.4%. CrowdStrike, a little bit of weakness. We rallied into the resistance gap from the earnings gap down on Friday. Lower highs, lower lows today, closed at the 10-day. I'm still watching this 20-day EMA and support gap area as a potential entry versus the low of the gap down zone, just as a higher low in this structure to get some exposure on a liquid leader in what has been a leading theme in the market. GEV, another stock that's on my watch list. Couple more days allow that 20-day EMA to catch up to the support gap. We had a little bit of weakness today, opening on the high, closing on the low, closing under the 5-day, but still above the 10. Overall, this stock hasn't even touched the 20-day since it started its move. So the first time a stock tests the 20-day, especially if it lines up with the support gap, is a spot that I will be willing to try some exposure on. ZS, first red day since the earnings pop, only down 1.1%, still above the 5-day EMA, still above this gap zone, not doing anything too wrong, and it pulled back on light volume today. Netflix, literally the first sign of any distribution or any selling today. Unfilled gap down. We opened at the high, closed near the low. We're still above the 10-day. We're still above this other gap zone. Really, I think this is just kind of like a short-term pullback, not doing anything too wrong here. Hood, we covered already. Great response off the 10-day EMA and support gap. And Roblox, uh, another stock that is literally putting in the first sign of any selling with an unfilled gap down. We opened near the high. We closed mid-range above the 5-day EMA, so I'm not too worried about this stock at all. Another name that hasn't touched its 20-day EMA since it started going. So if we do get a pullback into, say, this gap zone at $87 in the 20-day EMA, that's a spot that I would be willing to put some exposure on. All right, let's jump into some long setups. We got, let's see, 12 stocks to talk about. HSAI is the first one. This is a little bit thinner. Let me expand this so we can see what's going on. So ADR 8.3, so very volatile stock. Dollar volume at 85 million, relatively liquid. Uh, had a nice move from $4 up to like 24. Since then, put in this nice quality base. I'm looking for 2 different areas, either a break of this downtrend line, so a break over today's high, stop would be either today's low or the 20-day EMA, or on any market weakness. If this pulls into the gap zone, shakes out the low of the pullback, reclaims the gap zone low at 1860, that would be my entry spot versus wherever the shakeout low is. NRG, this kind of goes in with that CEG, GEV. What's the other one that I have on here? Basically a power play here. Really strong move on earnings, up 26%. Good day two, up 4.5%. Since then, not doing anything wrong, just trading sideways. Now we have the 20-day EMA and the HVC at the same spot, right at a round number of 150. I'm looking for a pullback into that area to get involved versus just the pullback or day two low, 147. So really tight risk if we can get that to play. GEV, we covered 20-day EMA support gap area to watch. Spotify, we did have an unfilled gap down today, but we closed above the 5-day moving average. I'm looking for a breakout retest and a test of this gap zone and 20-day EMA all at the same spot. Look for an undercut and rally of that zone right around 670 as a potential entry spot. Uber, this is the Elon competitor. So if Elon and Trump continue to butt heads, this is a name that had been a liquid leader before, has this massive base, broke out, and then has only retested the top part of this base. So even though it went through a couple weeks of relative weakness, this is just a breakout retest. We come in under the 20-day moving average, kind of shaking out the weaker hands, and we've reclaimed all the key moving averages today. Now we did run into the resistance gap. I'm looking for a pullback either into the 20-day EMA at 85.44, or if we can shake out the low of this gap up zone at 84.60, 62 area, that's a spot where I would try to get involved with a little bit more size, overall higher low, and hopefully we can get that going as well. NBIS, this has already made 5 days of a really strong move. So I wanted to put it on your radar, not for tomorrow, but for a couple days. If we have any pullback in the market, we have the HVC and 5-day EMA at $46 or this gap low at 48.28 as a potential spot to put some exposure on. Snowflake, I want to own this stock. It just hasn't given me quite the setup that I'm looking for. Couple more days and we'll have the 20-day moving average catching up to the support gap low, right at a round number of $200. So I'm looking for this with market turbulence if we ever get that. A shake under $200 and reclaim of that area would be my entry point. TEM, I did buy this today. I hope it's finally ready to get going. I really like what it did on the 28th through the 2nd of June, where we had a gap down, massive sell bar, 19.2% on big volume, two tight days at the 50-day moving average, and then we respond through those key moving averages, the 5, the 10, the 20, up 15%, kind of float down to test it again, and then today we got going up 7.8%, 7.9%. Because we closed above the high of this resistance gap, now we can eliminate that, and we're making this chart look even cleaner. So with this, if you're not already in it, I would just watch for a pullback to the 5-day moving average to manage risk against today's low. Otherwise, if we tighten up here for a couple days, a break over this resistance gap high would be another spot to enter. NVIDIA, now that we've closed above that DeepSeek gap down zone, now I'm just looking for a pullback to the 10-day EMA in this gap zone at 137.50. AVGO, we talked about this. We touched off the 10-day or touched off the support gap below the 10-day EMA. If we get like a day or two rally and then check back, that's a spot to enter. Or if we just put in like a higher low where we come into the zone, but we don't take out today's low, that's another spot that you could try. CrowdStrike, 20-day EMA support gap, we covered that. And AS, this is an IPO, a retail IPO that I really like the look of this chart. We held the 200-day moving average on both tests during April sell-off, rallied from 21 up to almost $40, so almost 100% move, probably like 90% move here. And now we're holding the 10-day EMA. We've closed above the HVC the last 2 days. We're eating into this last resistance gap. We have a very tiny gap down zone that we haven't tested yet, so we don't know for sure that there's sellers there. But looking for a move over the resistance gap high as a potential entry with a stop at the 10-day EMA. You could put it under the low from June 3rd there. Still really tight risk for AS. And then I only have 4 short setups. Every short setup that I put on continues to break to the upside, and that's a sign of a strong market. In a weak market, as you remember in March and April, every stock that was showing relative strength was the next stock to get hit to the downside. Every group that was showing relative strength, same thing, next group to fall lower. In a bull market or a very strong market like we're in right now, the reverse is true. Anything that shows relative weakness tends to break to the upside, and you get that breadth expansion. The reason I have these short setups that I put on every day is I just want a sense of when we get a shift in that risk on, risk off. If we do have some evidence that short setups are working to the downside, then it might be a little bit of a caution flag to say, hey, maybe we lighten up on our long exposure, maybe we tighten up our stops, take some profits into strength. But I haven't seen any of that yet. Every short setup I've put out on these videos have broken to the upside. QMCO, first one of the quantum names that had that massive move, 3 to 90. Insane move. But unlike many of the quantum names, we haven't rallied back near highs. We're under all the key moving averages. We had a nice day today, up 5%, but we still closed below the 5, the 10, the 20-day moving average. We closed slightly below the 5. So with this, I'm just looking for a break under today's low as a potential short spot versus today's high as the stop. MMYT, this has been on the short watch list for a while, continues to show relative weakness. On Friday, we had a rally to the resistance gap, failed, closed below all the moving averages. Today, lower highs, lower lows. I'm really looking for a close below this support gap at 97.70 as a trigger for a potential short. This is a stock that's made a massive move. We're now in a stage 3 top, potentially. If we lose the support gap, we don't have any support until $77 range, so a nice 20% drop to work with there. CEP, I did short this today on the loss of yesterday's low. We closed below this support gap. We closed below the 20-day EMA. I did take half of it off because it didn't completely fall apart. We undercut and held this gap up zone. And because we're in such a strong market, I don't want to be holding much short exposure overnight, especially in a risky stock like this. So if we lose this support gap, then I think we have a high, lower high, lower high. We had a lower low today, and then we actually have a change in the trend. But not not too confident, obviously, because everything's been shaking out and then breaking to the upside. So I didn't want to hold too much of that overnight. And last stock, RR, this is a robotic name, which a lot of the robotic stocks have been breaking to the upside. This one has not yet. And we have a ton of volume here where we gap down on the 29th to the 30th. And every time we try to rally into this gap zone, by the end of the day, they sell it down. They sell it down. They sell it down. And they're doing so with a lot of volume. That paired with how strong the market's been and how strong robotic names have been gives me a lot of worry. But again, this is a stock that's shown relative weakness in a strong market. Those tend to be the next ones to break out. If we close above this resistance gap, I think it's off to the races to the upside on this. But this is a name where there's just so much relative weakness and so much volume churning here that it gives me pause. And technically, if we break under like Friday's low, the 20-day EMA, that's a potential short spot versus like I would say whatever we open at tomorrow. But again, these short setups are more like to watch as confirmation of the tides turning versus actually taking the trades. So that's going to be the market recap for Monday, June 9th. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, we're doing these market recap videos Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'll be taking Friday off so I can do a full review of the week and prep for the upcoming week on a Saturday video, and then do a trading tips video on Sunday. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.